Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. May of the Office of Graduate Education and Life. Welcome to our session on how to write a diversity statement. As we all know how important it is nowadays to know how to write that statement when you're applying to many academic jobs. So with us today, we have Dr. Ellen Rodrigues, who is the Interim Director of the LGBTQ Center. We also have our program coordinator from our office, Michaelin Stump here. She just turned off her video, I think. If anybody has any question, feel free to type it in the chat so I could see them and I would read out your questions to Dr. Rodrigues at the end. Also, before you leave our session today, we have a small evaluation form that we would like for you to fill out so that we can get some feedback from you about this workshop and also future workshops. So if you don't mind giving us a few minutes at the end to complete that evaluation form. And I will show you that QR code and also the link so you could do the evaluation form right away. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Rodrigues.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellen. I am the Interim Director for the LGBTQ Center, and I'm also the Service Assistant Professor and I'm teaching a class on LGBTQ perspectives. Now, my background, I am originally from Brazil, and I did my college education in law, which is a professional degree there. And I did a master's in sociology and a PhD in political science. And I welcome you for this conversation. Feel free to interrupt me anytime if you want to unmute yourself or use the chat for questions. And as you know, today we'll be talking about how to write a diversity statement. And just to clarify, first, I'd like to start sharing the definition of diversity statement. And I'm sure you know it is the purpose of this statement. The purpose of this statement is to identify candidates who have professional skills, experience, or willingness to engage in activities that would enhance campus diversity and equity efforts. And pretty much overall, like the definition is the goal is to explain to a search committee the distinct experiences and commitments that you have had as a candidate for this position. Now, what we know is that the definition itself of the diversity statement is very different from institution to institution. Another topic that might be very controversial is the definition of diversity itself. Some institutions or some colleagues or mentors you might have heard referring to diversity of backgrounds or ideas, diversity in terms of geography and regions that people come from. And we will touch base into that. And it's pretty much a work of identifying how the institution what the institution or what your unit refers to in terms of diversity. Another topic that is more or less controversial is actually on how to write a diversity statement. If you Google this, as I did, I saw that different institutions had different approaches and suggestions. For example, being telling people, candidates, to be very personal and sharing personal stories or experiences. Others saying, no, just focus on the numbers out of your work. So obviously, experiences will be different if you are someone who is a faculty scholar who is Black, Latinx, or someone with a disability, or someone who is veteran. Definitely you will have different experiences to share. So it's often a matter of being strategic on what type of information you are getting out of the institution that you're applying. And one thing that I'm sure you know is that you will not going to use the same diversity statements in all applications, right? Each institution, each application, you will need to tailor your statements and also your the same with your interest letter to each position that you're applying for. Um, Before I get started on this example here, I wanted to ask you if you have enough option to rename yourself and to include your area, your major or your area of study. On the top right, oh, where you see your picture or your name, on the top right, you see three dots. So you can keep your first name. So in my name, for example, if I were to rename myself, let me see. So I find the three dots, then I click rename. So my name would be Ellen, then political science. Just so I have an idea of your area. And if you don't have an option to rename yourself, that's fine. I do have three examples, like in social science, STEM. Oh, thank you. I see. Kristen from English, Elena from geography, uh, focus on creative writing, higher ed. Awesome. And matter of fact, when I did advanced search on higher ed jobs, most, and I just like uh, between quotes, I put diversity statement. Most of the positions, out of like over 1,000 positions, were in higher ed. So higher education, you are ahead of the game if you, um, in terms of fields that require diversity statements. So let's look at this position here. And I want you to think about what it is that you would include in your statement based on this requirement. So the position is from St. Louis University, from the School of Education, and obviously they are asking for your master's, for your PhD, and or EDD, and then they say priority will be given to candidates with a record of conducting quantitative research to increase access to and improve equity in higher education. Now I have two questions. One, are they asking for a diversity statement? By show of hands, give me a thumbs up if you think that yes, I should send a diversity statement to to this job. So I see 1 out of 22. Let me see, expand my screen so I can see everybody. 2. So I'm assuming that most of you would not send a diversity statement, right? So that's something that you have to be very careful on whether or not they are asking. If they are not explicitly saying like, send a diversity statement, don't send it. Let me see if I see a comment in the chat. Yeah, so it's not listed in their application. Yeah, thank you so much. I got a message from someone in the chat saying, I don't see it listed. So this, so if it's not listed in their application, don't send it. But make sure you mirror the language that they have here. They are definitely asking, so the things that you will need to include almost like on top is the list of your courses on or how you implemented this quantitative experience on quantitative research methods in your curriculum. Now, what are the things, now this is my second question. What is it that you could be doing today in terms of diversity? Give me like one project or one assignment. What is it that you could be doing today that fulfills this requirement, that reflects quantitative research and equity. I'd love to hear from folks in higher ed or social sciences. This is very common in social sciences. So, what is it that you could be doing today? Like, what type of strategy or teaching tool or um, experiment or research that shows this type of that shows qualitative research improving equity in education? Feel free
Dr.
to answer in the chat or unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say if you wanted them to unmute themselves or if you wanted
Oh,
to write it
yeah.
in the chat.
I guess they cannot unmute themselves. So never mind. Feel free to use the chat if you can. And I see. Um, yeah, you can chat. You can answer in the chat to me privately. Yeah, I know you cannot chat with everyone in the room. And I understand if you say, hey, you know what? I have no idea. Uh, so the one thing that I wanted to highlight here is the word equity, that you make sure you know the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion. If they are asking for a diversity statement, definitely they are asking for examples, like very visible examples of how you implemented equity. Um, Equity is different from equality. So we don't want, one thing is, for example, diversity. Let's bring diversity. So we engage, you help faculty or students engage in recruitment of people, students from different backgrounds. Another thing is retention. You engage um, in practices in your classroom, for example, tracking system of attendance to making sure your students are meeting the goals and they are not only attending class, but they are also um, being able to show a positive learning outcome. And so that affects retention. Um, so we have someone here who just answered to me in the chat privately saying, I work as a success coach predominantly with first generation students. We run the numbers each term to see how they do compared to general population. Yes, so absolutely, this counts, and you are ahead of the game for this position. And I think their deadline is December 1st, maybe. Um, so this, so definitely, uh, this is an example of how you could, just by what you shared with me, it already showing how you are contributing, collaborating with faculty and students in this way that you are helping first generation students. Now, let's see another example here from engineer. So in this position, you are sending a diversity statement, and in this diversity statement, they are giving you the option to show how your teaching, service, or scholarship is supporting success of students from diverse or underrepresented backgrounds. And here, you can focus on race, you can focus on first generation students, you can focus on gender in male dominated fields, specifically engineer. Um, you can talk about ability and disability in specifically providing examples of how you were able to support students from diverse backgrounds. Um, what it's important to include here is your understanding of the field. So out of these two examples, and I have one more example that I will show you, what the most important strategy that you're going to use is not just like showing things that you are doing, but actually showing your understanding of lack of diversity in the discipline and how your work is filling that gap. Does that make sense? So let's see just one more example here from this position on, they are looking for an assistant professor in game design and development. And they are asking not only the diversity statement, but also like you need to send a cover letter, your CV, your statement of teaching, your research philosophy statement, a diversity statement, and a professional portfolio. So this is a lot of work, but it's actually really good because you can break down your areas of work into all these different documents. You can focus on your pedagogy and how your initiative for an inclusive pedagogy is visible on the examples that you will list on your diversity statement. And they do say specifically how this request is aligned with the institutional goal, specifically in areas of faculty effort, scholarship, instruction, and engagement. So pretty much the ideal candidate here must know the institutional mission, value, what are the initiatives that they are doing, and how you can add to the efforts that they are already championing. Um, this is something that you're gonna do. You can mention on your interest letter, on your cover letter. I'm interested in this position because, and then you echo their efforts on how they see themselves and what are the things that they are doing. This is, even if you perceive there are many institutions that might be engaging in um, so much work that it might feel like this is just a check on the box, but this is not the time to criticize that work, but actually to understand that this is an effort being made, and this is how I can contribute in this area. And this is what I have done in the past in my teaching, because your teaching or your service or your contribution to the discipline will be not scrutinized or challenged, but actually will be enhanced during this application process. Any comments or questions so far? So let me ask you this. So this is an introduction of a letter, and um, the introduction of a diversity statement. And this person said, I'm particularly drawn to this position because as an educator, my role is to engage students in dialogue and reflection, to develop consciousness of themselves, the world, and their transformative and creative power to promote change. What do you think about it?
Dr. Rodriguez, I have allowed the students or the participants to unmute themselves. So if they want to ask a question, they can unmute themselves.
Okay, thank you. So would you use this first paragraph? What do you think about it?
I don't know if this is right or not, but I feel like there's nothing really specific to tie it to what job they're going after.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So if you only have one page or 2 pages at most to write your diversity statement, you are, by saying things that are too vague, you might be losing the opportunity to share examples. And this is not a, it doesn't, what's written here doesn't differentiate you from everybody else, right? Everybody is passionate about education. Everybody wants their students to engage in critical thinking, and also engage in creative and transformative power. So just pay attention to what it is that you have been doing so far and provide those examples. I see in the chat. Exactly. So exactly what someone just shared here in the chat. Like the statement needs to be more specific and directly address what the candidate has done. The same with the second one, which is quite often seen in many letters, many diversity statements. This, I am passionate for instruction, course and curriculum development, professional growth, service to students, and service to the college and community. So often people mention that, but this is not something that if the committee who is looking at your letter, again, it doesn't differentiate you, it doesn't give examples, it's something that is um, it's what you're saying, but it cannot be compared to somebody else. And if somebody else provided example, if they provided examples of engagement in diversity in their curriculum, definitely they will have a better chance of being considered. So this first minutes of this presentation, I just wanted to take you to the reflection of thinking about this process of writing a diversity statement as a process of knowledge, self-knowledge, and also knowledge of the institution and your knowledge in terms of the discipline. So in terms of knowledge of the institution, when you are applying for the job, make sure make sure first of all that you are one of the first applicants. Don't wait, because every day that goes by, who knows, like 50 to 100 people already applied for that position, and the committee is probably feeling overwhelmed on the number of applicants. So the sooner you apply, higher your chances to have your application taken into consideration. And right in the beginning, echo the mission or the values of the institution. uh, Go and take a look. Many applications have contact information, like the chair of the committee or the chair of the department. Look them up, see their area of interest, see if they embed the language of diversity in their own bio, and echo that language as well. And in the job description, make sure you know exactly what is being asked. And when you um, include your documents, when you attach your documents, don't make sure to add your name, your last name. For example, Rodrigues CV, Rodrigues diversity statement, Rodrigues um, reference letter. So don't just attach a document with CV or diversity statement, because other applicants might also have done this, and that makes your document could get lost. So just make life easier for the recruiter, for the members of the committee. If possible, there are many positions that also ask for you to have everything in one single document. So make sure you know how to attach documents in PDF. Um, we talked about the diversity, uh, the definition of diversity. And one thing that I want you to take into consideration is how you can contribute to the efforts of that institution, and particularly looking at the demographics that they are looking at. Sometimes it is a HSI, a Hispanic serving institution, or maybe you are applying for an institution who is predominantly white, or a historic Black college or university, or if it is a community college, which the demographic is could be they could have a bigger a larger percentage of non-traditional students. And when you're looking at the demographics and where they reached out to, see also how like steer away from definitions of diversity outside uh, race or gender, social class, or sexual orientation. Like it's more, I would say, the best strategy, including to show evidence out of your curriculum, is to show how you made advances and efforts towards these aspects of diversity. Um, the again, you might be able to identify institutional deficit in ways that they might be mishandling diversity initiatives, for example, focusing on equality instead of equity. So focus on the goals and focus on how you can contribute them to achieve their goals. And it is controversial on whether or not you should use your story. Again, you can be strategic here and see if it is the case for each institution, because sometimes you might want to share how you learned to how you engaged in ways to get to know your students, or how you come from you are part of an underrepresented group and you had to navigate obstacles to be able to share that experience in the classroom. Or sometimes you want to say, no, I had to learn what privilege means, and it helped me share this information in my classroom, or realize how my curriculum, how my um, portfolio or your syllabus was only representative of cisgender white male, like not all different voices were represented in the material that you're teaching. Um, Another thing that you also need to take into consideration, besides the institution, is the discipline itself. Do you know if there are persistent forms of discrimination and bias in your field? So be ready to answer those conversations, especially if you're getting ready for a job interview and they ask, "Oh, why is it that you use this technique or you use this assignment in your class?" And then you can say, "Oh, you know what? Most of my students are looking forward to working in this major," or this population is not represented in my field. So this is my commitment to advancing this conversation in my discipline. So learning the demographics, learning how your field actually looks like in terms of representation, and that really gives you the vocabulary and the knowledge to navigate questions regarding your commitment to the field. Um, and I finally, like I also talked about learning yourself, right? Learning about yourself and where you come from and where you are in terms of representation in your professional field. So what are the professional associations? Are there associations for people of color? What is your area of expertise? Is there an affinity group or a Facebook group for example, we have the Association for um, Hispanic Latinx engineers or Black engineers, and also within each area of um, expertise or mechanical or aerospace. So think about yourself and what is it that you bring into the conversation. What are the initiatives that you have been doing or that you're willing to be engaged on? Sometimes you notice in the job description or the description of the discipline that one area of focus is mentoring. You can mention that, yes, I do expect some type of informal pressure from informal mentoring or supporting student organizations or participating in encouraging students to attend conferences. So these are some of the areas that you can be involved right now, or you can share that you would be willing to do that, given your commitment with your professional association. Any questions so far? Any comments? So what we know is that a great deal of your diversity statement will be providing examples of your teaching, and also service outside of the classroom, or learning and service opportunities outside the classroom. So when you are in your interview and when you're talking about to the committee about your efforts, make sure you have language that includes how you have been doing, what strategies you have been doing to recruit and retain students. Do you know your students? Who do you teach to? And what did you learn from teaching to this population? Or what did you learn about pedagogy that that enhanced your ability to engage with people from different backgrounds? What is it that you know about adult learners or students with children? What types of flexibilities you have engaged now this year specifically with COVID? Like, many of us had to be very flexible, very creative. And so keep in mind those strategies that you engaged on to facilitate, to help your students facilitate their learning process. And also students with disabilities or veterans or LGBTQ students. How did you get to know your students and their reality? What are the things that you implemented in that aspect for different learners and learning types? Other questions to reflect on, because your statements will be pretty much an inventory of your teaching, but you don't want to provide a list of everything that you did, but just highlight examples. You can highlight comments from your students that will be able to answer this question: that can you, what, are you making changes to your teaching, or can you teach people from diverse backgrounds without deficit thinking? And this is where you want to highlight the beauty of diversity and how it actually helps on the in the learning process, how the students from different backgrounds contribute to the learning process from each other. And the diversity of perspectives also, because that's often uh, how we learn, right? How we can make sense of different experiences and take into consideration different contexts. So based on what I said so far, I would like to ask you to give me your opinion about these two examples. The first one on the left. What do you think about this language? So based on reaction as a thumbs up, give me a thumbs up if you would hire someone that included this language on the left. Yep, nobody. What about the one on the right? And I've been getting comments in the chat too. Someone just said yes. So The one on the left, I think it would be useful for them to elaborate more on what learning experiences they are referring to. So I'm just like giving you lots and lots of examples of what not to do because they are unfortunately very common out there. It feels vague again. Um, it would be better to describe everything, right? Describe the learning styles, which is controversial. Some people say that this was big, like 10 years ago about learning types and learning styles, but there are different um, different schools. I'm not from education, but I did hear that that is not such a thing anymore. Now we should acknowledge that people use different ways of learning one subject, and they might use, for example, um, kinesthetic and visual at the same time. And the example on the right is, I would say, a good example because you can actually see what's happening. And for the recruiter or for the committee, they can feel more assured that you as a new faculty, I can trust you to develop a similar program here, and that's what I want you to do. So I can trust that you as a job candidate will come and you'll be ready to implement these partnerships between the university and the community.
Dr.
um,
Rodriguez,
yeah.
I don't know if you're seeing the same message I am. Here's one that says, I'd like to know the types of learning experiences.
Yes.
You have that one?
I think it would be useful for them to elaborate more what learning experiences they are referring to. Yeah, so this is a critique of the previous uh, I'm sorry, let me see here. Is this a comment from, yeah, like I currently provide learning experiences where students from diverse backgrounds and learning styles. So this is very vague language. Now, if you were, how would you go about providing more concrete examples? So one example is here on the right, those partnerships. Other examples is, let's say, saying that you created opportunities for students to do a self-assessment or to um, write a reflection or um, provide um, examples of representation of diversity in their work or in the field. Um, so there are or opportunities for engagement outside the classroom or inviting guest speakers. Like those are visible, like concrete examples. Other examples here is here, instead of saying, oh, I discuss both local and international perspectives, like say specifically what topics did you bring to the classroom, or mention students were able to identify X number of social issues out of this example. Or when you talk about recognizing your role, um, talk about how many students you might be engaged with or how their overall, how did you meet, how did you measure learning outcomes. um, and instead of saying how students feel, you might want to add comments from them, right? Quotes from what students said. So just to finish up um, on possible pitfalls, one is, as you identified here, and you did a great job. One is in not being not being specific. So think of topics in class, student reactions, assignments, comments from students, as I already mentioned. Another common mistake is to forget to revise. And I've seen a few letters where the letter was addressed to another institution, or it had typos or other mistakes. So that is like automatically removed from the pile of potential finalists. And finally, like not doing yourself justice, especially if you are from an underrepresented group, or if culturally you're not used to bragging about yourself. um, Please realize that you do have the this is the moment for you to really reflect on the challenges, on the rewards, on the difficulties that you overcame, and especially on that, um, what you're teaching outside the curriculum, right? And how you go about choosing your topics or your course material or images for your course. And if you don't have any experience yet with diversity initiatives, that is so much you can do. Here on campus, I wanted to highlight professionals and people who are already doing anti-racist pedagogy or gender inclusive pedagogy, people who are tracking attendance of generation students, like one of the colleagues here shared, being mentor. And you can be a mentor to Trio, Rise, or Empower with the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. There are commissions also on campus and committees focused on diversity. The president has working groups. Now, one thing that I wanted to highlight is that make sure you use letterhead and give your references a heads up that, hey, I'm applying for this job. Likely you're gonna hear from this institution. And on your statements, make sure you mention what you mention reflects their mission in terms of diversity. I think that's all. And I'm gonna stop sharing right now.
Okay.
So now I'd like to hear if you have any questions, and if not, and I'm gonna, any comments or questions, anything that stood out to you. So please stay with us. I want to pass now to Dr. May, who will talk to you about an assessment.
Yes. Participants, please feel free to ask questions. And I think from my experience though, like when I work with students on their resume, sometimes they don't think about things that they could use. So if anybody has doubt on certain activities, whether it counts as diverse initiatives or your experience working with a diverse group, go ahead and throw those out now so we could discuss it, so we could help you think about these things to include either on your resume or in your diversity statement. While I am going to now bring up the, let's see, I'm going to share my screen. All right, here. So right, can you see the screen? Yeah, go ahead.
Ellen, I have a question, and Christy in higher ed, and I've done a couple diversity statements, and I almost feel like I start out by apologizing for being privileged, and I'm just wondering what you see at, how to avoid that, or what your perspective on that is coming at this from almost a sense of, I'm apologizing for being white, straight, middle class, all that kind of stuff. And so how do you avoid someone in my position approaching it that way?
So I feel like this is an answer that is controversial. I've seen like UCLA, for example, if you Google how to write a diversity statement, some institutions like UCLA will tell you, yes, absolutely acknowledge privilege and mention it in your story on your learning process. Other institutions will say, and I feel like it's, if it is a red state, that you don't need to say that. Um, so, but you could, so that's a matter of being strategic about the institution and the location. And you can, what you can do is mirror their efforts to see if the emphasis is actually perhaps not in the definition of privilege itself, but it's in showing those numbers. So you can tell, hey, while in this institution, 50% of the students graduated, the students from my class, 80% of my students graduated. And I've been tracking them since the beginning. I know them, um, um, and I ask them to, and I share resources with them about, for example, writing studio or the Office of Accessibility Services. Or after students missed 2 classes, I send them an email. Or even recently, I know a faculty actually calling students at home and saying, hey, what's going on? Do you have internet at home? Like what are the issues that are, so I think though showing examples of how you are purposefully acting to overcome inequalities in retention and graduation, that speaks volume
Mhm.
in terms of acknowledging privilege.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I see something in the chat, or this is the link to the survey. We have a question. In a diversity statement, should we focus more on your teaching pedagogy, or should you include ways your research contributes to diversity too? It pretty much depends on the position, right? If it is like we saw here, 3 or 4 different types of job descriptions, um, mirror the language of the description. If they are asking for examples in teaching, focus on that. If it's asking for research, focus on that. There are a lot of staff positions in higher ed who are asking for examples in service too. So it's a matter of um, looking, showing them that um, you are doing the job that they are asking for you to do. If it is a R1 institution, very likely it's in research, because you, depending on the grant, you might also be required to include a diversity statement with your research application, with your grant application. Or I've also seen, I actually had to write a reference letter for a researcher who needed endorsement from the university's diversity office. This was a while ago. So any other question?
If not, we would appreciate if you, I put this up on the screen, you can just scan the QR code and then answer a few questions to help us complete the evaluation. I'm sure Dr. Rodrigues would like to know your feedback about this workshop. And yeah, also you could get to that link, which I think maybe Michaelin had put in the chat.
This is Michaelin. I don't have the link actually,
Oh,
so I can't put
sorry.
it in the chat.
Okay. Okay, let's see if I could put that in. Yes. I thought Ellen said that she saw the. All right, let's see if I could get that to everyone in meeting. Okay. All right, so it's there now. Can everyone see that? Okay, thank you. So if you don't mind just taking maybe 2 minutes of your time to complete that, would appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate if you can help us with feedback on how we can improve this conversation.
Stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much for all of you who participated. Shout out to my folks from political science. All right, thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time, Dr. Rodriguez. Yeah, and thank you everyone for participating. We will see you soon in another workshop.
All right. Yeah, Dr. May, if you can